Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and science of running and the stuff that we put on our feet. Today at the round table, we have the founder of Doctors of Running, Dr. Matthew Klein. We have Dr. David Salas and myself. I'm Nathan Brown. Excited to be with all of you again. And today we get to dive into the mailbag. We have a lot of questions from you all. Some of them are more broad questions. Some of them are specific about shoes, and some of them are specific about medical conditions. And whenever we talk about medical conditions, we always just want to say upfront that we're not giving medical advice. We're just talking about these concepts in terms of how we would approach them as healthcare providers, but not giving specific medical advice to anybody. And if you are dealing with any sort of pain, we definitely think you should go see your physical therapist, find someone who can help you work through all of those things. But before we dive into the mailbag, let's talk about the stuff that we have on our feet right now. What do you have in for testing? And just a reminder, this segment is sponsored by and powered by Skratch Labs, and they pretty much have everything you may need from recovery to in-run nutrition to hydration. So check them out if you have not already. But Matt, what have you been testing lately?
So it's going to be new for people. It's not new for me. We've had this for a while. I just hit 100 miles on the Brooks Adrenaline 25. It has survived and most of the heel is still intact. So this is, by the time this comes out, this shoe will come out November 1st of 2025. It's been a good update. It's still not a sexy shoe, but it's just a good shoe for walking, general mileage. It is now 10 millimeter drop, which I think is the first time in its entire life that it's ever gone from 10 to 12. Heel's a little bit better beveled, and so it's been kind of the smoothest heel transition, which is why it's actually one of the first times recently I've taken Adrenaline to 100 miles. It's not, again, not the bounciest shoe, but it can still get through daily miles. Not a shoe I would use for anything fast, but just some slow updates from Brooks to go, okay, we're slowly moving forwards. Still very comfortable shoe, and another shoe that I'm going to go, hey, this is going to be a shoe that's going to be popular with the general public, and I understand why. Other shoes that I've got is the Hoka Rocket X Trail. I am struggling a teeny bit with this one a little bit just because of the lower drop, and I'm coming back from Achilles irritation that is actually progressing really, really well. It's a really big piece of wood stuck in the bottom of the shoe. It's a little lower drop. The heel counter is a little stiff, but outside of that, this is a great shoe if you can handle that. It's like one of the first ones where I'm like, I really enjoy this for doing true workouts on the trail. Really nice, bouncy, but not unstable shoe. Really great sidewalls, very stable with the wider midfoot. I've just been really enjoying it. It's just the lower drop and the heel counter aren't quite working for me, but I think for a lot of people, it'll be fine. I also might suggest going a half size up. It's definitely a teeny bit short, but that's just the snug kind of racing feel. Other stuff that I've got, the Mach X3, which is, upper update. It's actually, the upper is less secure for me than the original. And so this has been interesting, but the sole's supposedly the same. Almost done with miles on this. And then the Mizuno Wave Rebellion Flash 3, which I like this shoe, but I am struggling with it. Like, it feels like the Rebellion Pro 1, really nice upper. I think some people might suggest getting a half size up, but it's been fine with a close fit. It's just so medially biased that I'm struggling with it. I'm not sure how many miles I'm going to get on it, but I think those people with more neutral mechanics or someone like Andrea, they're going to do really, really well. So yeah, a variety of stuff that is and isn't working, and we'll get reviews on that stuff. But yeah, that's what I've got in for testing.
Cool. What about you, David?
Yeah, so I just finished the written review for the Puma Magnified Nitro 3. I got it right, baby. Let's go.
Hey-o. I'm pretty sure this is the first time, because you usually call the Magnify the Velocity, and then the Velocity, you can never remember what the name actually is. You're like some Puma shoe.
No, I don't think I've ever gotten the Magnify wrong. I think it's the Velocity. Difference between Deviate and Velocity, and then the Deviate Nitro Elite versus what's up, Matt?
At least you're not a fool like me who kept calling it the Magnifly for a long time. It's
That's
not
different
Magnify. Yeah, it's
different shoe.
Magnify. Yeah, I can't.
Magnify.
Yeah.
Puma Magnify.
Yeah.
Topo Magnify.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's a clean white on white colorway. How it's still clean, I have no idea. You could see a little bit on the bottom there, and then on the medial side. Actually, that looks pretty good. Anyways, very neutral shoe. It's an interesting experience. It's kind of like that traditional high drop training feel, like that you would expect from like a classic, like let's say Mizuno Wave Rider or like what the Pegasus used to be, what the Cumulus used to be. Like it feels very traditional in that way from a drop and a transition standpoint. It's not super rockered, but the foam is really soft. And that's the difference, where it's like it's a novel feeling to something that feels traditional, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And very, very neutral shoe, because that foam is really soft. And there's a little bit of sole flare, but not much. It's just, yeah, what's up?
So I saw on there that now the foam, because I had the same experience as you, we both are on that review, David led it, that it's a nitrogen infused PIBA foam.
I didn't see that anywhere though. I went to Puma's site.
It's on Running Warehouse. So maybe I'm wrong, but
it might be. Yeah. Sometimes what's on like the company site and what's on a third party site differ a little bit.
Did you?
I know it's nitrogen infused for sure.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if it's a nitrogen infused PIBA. I mean, it's like 9 ounces, 10 millimeter drop, 40 in the heel, 30 in the forefoot. Like it's pretty fun. It's just, and it's funny because this is like one of the few shoes where I'm like, this is not unstable. Like they do a pretty good job for the platform that they have. It's just truly neutral. Like this is like as neutral as a shoe can possibly get. And I feel like normally when I'm in better running shape, I could probably control the shoe just a little bit better. And I think I would really, really enjoy it. And I still enjoy it now. I feel like I find myself kind of gravitating for things that just have a little bit more structure on them right now. But who knows? I get a month or two of running under me and then maybe I love these shoes more. But they're nice. It's an engineered knit upper. They fit well. Expands well. It's secure. It's good. And then the other ones that I have on my feet, the two that Matt said. So I'll just grab them. So Mach X3, Wave Rebellion Flash 3, from Mizuno and Hoka, respectively. And then the one that was not listed is the Salomon Aero Blaze 3 Gravel. Yep. I'm actually excited about this one because I liked the Blaze 3, but it just felt a little bit unstable in the midfoot. Whereas I feel like putting a little bit more of a thicker lug design might make it just a little bit more rigid and make that transition a little bit smoother. And who knows, I know this is technically meant to be kind of gravel, but I feel like I might like it as like a road / gravel and maybe light trail shoe in comparison to the original. And then it might end up just being a nicer trainer overall, like than the original. But I don't know that yet. I still got to run in it. So
that was my experience actually with the Aero Glide 3 Gravel, where it just the firmer mid outsole just stabilized it a little bit more, and it was totally fine on road. It was a great road trail gravel kind of shoe, whatever you want to do. It's probably not the most technical shoe, but we have a decent number of gravel roads here in this part of Oregon, and it's been great to be able to transition. So you may experience that, but I might be wrong. I don't know.
Perfect. Well, my update is that I'm not running anything. I had been training for the 50K and just kind of trying to do this push for something that I wasn't fully ready for. And I was able to run 20 last weekend, a little over 20. And that was just super fun to get a long run in, a little over 3 hours for me. And so I knew when I went out for that run, I was like, I'm going to go out on this run to embrace the idea of going on a longer run, whether or not it results in the fruit of actually doing this 50K. And for those who have listened to the podcast, I've spoken about my thing with my big toe, and it kind of blew up probably a year and a half ago now, maybe 2 years ago. Can't remember exactly, but that came back on a minor scale. It did not get super big and red, but it swelled up enough that I could feel like, oh, this is the start of what it was. And so I'm just shutting it down. So I haven't ran in a little over a week now, and that's okay. I've got the Salomon Blaze 3 Gravel upstairs, but haven't gotten any mileage on it. So David, that means you're off the hook for your 50K unless you're going to do it anyway. Yeah.
When he sent the message to our group chat, I was like, oh darn, looks like I don't have to run the 50K.
Also, sorry, Nate. Yeah.
Also, I'm actually sorry. And I hope you feel better soon.
Yeah. I'm not too concerned. I think because I shut it down early, I'm going to be all right pretty quick here, and then just kind of get back to some base miles. So like I said, I had a lot of fun running 20. I ran the 20 in 2 different shoes. I did a rotation of 2 different trail shoes just to see what that would be like if I were because I was probably going to swap for the 50K because it was like the 50K was going to take me like 10 to 12 hours. So I was planning to switch because the
plan to be out there for a while.
The fastest who's ever finished it is like 640 or so.
Oh,
really?
So it's a little bit harder because it's just a lot of it's just up and down like a little. I can't even call it a mountain. I feel weird saying that, but
I wonder what
like it's 7,500 feet and it's just very very up and down. And it's central Wisconsin, so it's not like we're getting these stellar ultra marathoners. I don't mean to offend anybody who runs ultra marathons in central Wisconsin, but we're not getting like Jim Walmsley to come and like set a course record, I guess is my point.
So there's a race here in Santa Barbara called 9 Trails, and it's basically up and down the 9 trails of our front country.
Is it Pokemon themed?
It is, yes.
9
like Nintendo comes out, they throw a whole thing. Sweet. You know, you get to finish with a giant hug from Pikachu himself.
There's a shorter version of the race called Vulpix, and you eventually evolve into the 9 Tails course.
9 Trails.
There you go. That was a solid pun. That was a good one. I will welcome that.
It was a good team effort, honestly.
That one's 35 miles, so just a little over 50K, but I'm pretty sure the course record on that's like low 6s.
Oh.
And Jim has run that. He has the number 2 time, I think.
Wow, so that's pretty.
I think Rod might have got him last year. It's not fun. It's like straight up. Basically, you go from like sea level to 4,000 over and over again.
Yeah,
in a very short amount of time.
That's insane.
Just weaving your way. Yeah, I don't know what the climb and the vert is on that race, but that sounds awful. So who knows? Maybe I'll do it next year.
Yeah, definitely. If I do it, you'll do it. So anyway, not running anything, but have been enjoying not running this past week. It worked out well since it was the first week of the semester. So I was just diving into getting my feet on the ground and connecting with students and stuff, which was great. So that's what we got on our feet. So if you want to try out Skratch Labs, which now is coming out with different seasonal stuff as well, like every fall they come out with their apple cider hydration stuff. And I actually really do like it in warm water, like as apple cider. It tastes stupid good. It makes me mad. It shouldn't be good.
It's not good and not as good in cold water. I will comment. Warm water, 100%. It's awesome. Like cider, cold water is kind of like.
I don't like it on the run. I like it I don't like it as much on the run. I like it in a mug with hot water. But if you want to try Skratch, we have a code. It's Doctors of Running. You'd get 20% off your first order. All right, let's dive into the mailbag. Our first question comes from Simone from Italy, and they're asking this. How do you think shoe brands decide the stack heights of different shoes? Do they test many different prototype stacks and found what stack would work better with the foam and for its intended purpose? For example, why is the Superblast 44 in the heel? I wonder what it would be at 3830 instead. And also he makes a comment, we want more stable, neutral super shoes. Matt's definitely not disagreeing with you there.
Me too.
So before we even answer this question, I think the reality is that every single company has a different philosophical approach and resources to go about the research and development for shoes. What I can tell you is that we have heard stories of how shoes have gotten developed, and the story does look different depending on what the shoe is coming down the line. So it's going to be hard to directly answer this question because every shoe has a different genesis, and one might go through a certain ability to test at different stack heights and another one might not. And sometimes it just pops out with what worked well and what tested with different runners who they have in their wear testing. But do you have any other further thoughts, y'all, on this?
Yeah, I think we could start off just by looking at what the market tells them. I think that ultimately is one of the biggest drivers, right? Because at the end of the day, these companies do have to sell shoes. And so if consumers are saying, hey, we want it higher, we want it softer, a lot of companies are going to start making them higher and softer. That doesn't exactly answer the specific stack height measurement, but let's say all the shoes were 35, then they go to 40, then they go to 45, right? And that's kind of where we're at right now. But where I'm going with this too, like when we see a lot of these new shoes coming out, we're also seeing the advancement of some of these technologies. And like you alluded to this earlier, but like sometimes you can only do so much with the material that you know, and sometimes they can't fully compress it down to 35 or 30, depending on the foam and what they know about those properties. And that's going to go more into the material science and chemical side of things, but sometimes they just can't. And maybe they can in the future, but they got to like learn how to hone these materials in, because when we see those materials, sometimes they might get that material literally like less than 2 years from you seeing it on your feet, which means they have to get this thing, scale it, make a shoe, and then like get it out to the people in a pretty short amount of time from a development standpoint and a scaling standpoint. So ultimately the market's going to kind of drive what people are going to see coming back out because of all of the feedback, but every company does have their internal testings. I remember, on the podcast we had, actually, I don't remember if it was podcast or internal, so I won't say the company, but there was a company making a shoe and they were designing a shoe based on the forefoot and how the rocker angle was at a very specific point. And we were talking like 1 to 2 degrees of difference, where it's like, okay, this one's at 10, this one's at 12, this one's at 14, that one's at 8. And then like running it through their elites and through different kinds of wear testing, you mean like, okay, what is the one that we like the most, right? And sometimes it's as specific as that. And sometimes it's just like, is it soft? How is the upper? Like, so they have their own like wear testing that they do, and their different processes that they run these shoes through for validation. But the short answer is yes, they take feedback and they give it back to you in what you want, or what the general consensus wants that they interpret. But the long answer is everything I just said. So it's a whole process, and it's an ongoing process. So
right. Matt, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think what both of you said is great. I think it's a multimodal process that not only varies within the company, it probably varies on the individual. And like both of you said, it again depends on the goal of the product. So if you're looking for something more cushion, they have the option to add more stack height now. That'll vary. Obviously, they're trying to keep it race legal, whatever that means. And there's things that they're going to be limited by, like, what's the weight going to be? Is it too much? What's the geometry like? Is it going to feel smooth? So they're working with multiple variants together. Stack height is one piece of that. And I think it may depend. Sometimes depending on the goal, they may start with a measurement. Sometimes they may finish with it. So I think it's going to vary depending on, as you both mentioned, what's the goal of this shoe and what are we trying to achieve? And we can make things that are that tall that are far lighter than they've ever been before. And we have foams and geometries that you can do that with now. So that's why, in the market too, is why it's driven. That's what people want. The general public seems to want more. So
I think that there's an element where I wish we could say that every company is testing every type to see which one is going to be the most optimal for running economy or for durability or for whatever value point that somebody's going to put on a shoe. But it's just not possible to cover every single value point. And in some ways, as David said, what ends up coming to market is in part driven by what the market wants. And so what I mean by that is if there is a company that for years has been having their highest stack shoe at 28 millimeters in the heel, and they keep calling that their maximal option, people are going to look at that and start to scoff at it. And so if you want to have a true shoe in that space, you're going to have to change what your stack is to match the market demand. And so I wish it was all driven by altruistic things. And I shouldn't even put it opposed to altruism, but like there is some element where the companies need to sell their product, and they need to also give the market what people are asking for. So again, I think there's some beauty in that too, because what we have seen from an injury prevention standpoint is find the thing that's most comfortable for you. And so if you can have different shoes on the market that are comfortable, you might be in a good spot. And with more stack comes some variability in what you can do with geometry and stiffness and all that kind of stuff. Let's move on to our next question. So this next one is, I think, an interesting one. It's from Gustav, and he's asking about one of our reviews specifically. And it was about our Asics Megablast review. He says, "Hi, I just read the Asics Megablast review, and I couldn't help but notice that Nate and Matt don't seem to agree on if the shoe is stable neutral or not, with Nate classifying it as a true neutral shoe and Matt as a stable neutral. I usually do well with stable neutral shoes, and shoes that work for Matt tend to work for me too. Could you elaborate on why you rated the Megablast differently with regard to its inherent stability, and what does that mean for the whole concept of stable neutral, since it apparently can come down on how the shoe is perceived by one person or another?" Thanks for everything you do and keep up the good work.
This email was sent, by the way, like within 24 hours after like Nathan started the review. He did a phenomenal job. And then I updated it like several weeks later as I finally got to miles on the Megablast. And this email was like, I literally just put that up like a few minutes ago. Wow. All right. So Nate, what do you think? I want you to start.
Well, I think it kind of starts with our labeling as to why I put it neutral and why you put it stable neutral. So I can give my take there. So when you look at like the specs of the shoe, some of the things that typically define a stable neutral shoe are the width of the outsole contact from heel, midfoot, and forefoot. And from that standpoint, there is a lot of width on the platform connecting the shoe to the ground. Something else that typically leads to some sort of stable neutral, some sort of cradling of the foot and having some sidewalling or some kind of barricades, and how much those actually do anything, we don't know. It's very much an unknown area, probably less than we think that they do. Another thing that sometimes makes something stable neutral is the type of like cutouts in the middle. Maybe that leads a path of least resistance and you would fall into that middle zone without pushing your foot one way or another. And then the other thing that sometimes leads to stable neutral is the foam properties itself. Something that's a little bit firmer, something that maybe it has some sort of longitudinal plate, one that spans the width of the shoe. It creates some sort of leveling and rigidity there. Those are things that typically land into a stable neutral, or it's lower stack, and it doesn't need anything to stabilize it. So those are typically the things that fall into a stable neutral category. For me, there were some of those elements that the Megablast had. I would say that the width contact with the ground definitely had it. And that for me is pretty much where it ended, because there were not big sidewalls on that shoe. They were very, very minimal. And there was stiffness of the shoe just because of how much stack there was. And in fact, I didn't know if there was a plate or not when I first tested it, because I did a blinded review. And I even said, like, there could be a plate in this that I just can't see. There's not a plate. But when I was running in the shoe, the foam for me, though not like squishy soft, it is very bouncy. And so every time I would land, the shoe would wobble back and forth. And so I didn't feel like, and especially because I compared it right next to the Sonic Blast, which I did not get along well with, but the stability of the Sonic Blast versus the stability of the Megablast were very different from that wobbly sensation hitting the ground. And so it was that softness of the foam for me that put it in the neutral category. What brought you to stable neutral?
It was kind of the things that you mentioned, this is a specific thing to me where I work very well typically with wider soles, and the Megablast actually has, if you look at it visually, just a little bit more medial flare than lateral flare. So that's already something that's going to work a little bit better for me, but it's also might be a little unstable for those that go a teeny bit more lateral, especially with the bouncy foam, which again, that's going to work even better for me. The sidewalls are present. They're pretty minor. I don't know if they're adding it, but it's really the width and the stiffness. And the true litmus test for me is, can I take this on a long run and not feel like I'm starting to get unstable and have my hips, which are frequently, if you have a wider shoe that are a wider lasted shoe that is really soft, where my foot will do okay and my hips will just struggle. It was absolutely fine. It's been my go-to long run shoe, both for easy and up tempo efforts. And I love, it's kind of like what I was hoping a little bit the Superblast could do a little bit more of, but the Superblast is more stable neutral than the Megablast. Yeah. It's like, for me, it's just right without being too stiff, but I can also understand that people that need more, this is not going to be enough. And if you're sensitive to like really bouncy soles, which I typically do well with, it's going to bounce. So yeah, and this is exactly why we like to have multiple reviewers on reviews, is because you're going to get different opinions, because we are actually going to react to the issue differently. So I think this is awesome. Yeah. If you tend to do well with stuff that I tend to do well with, yes. But if you're someone who better follows what Nathan does, I would go with that. And so having people that you kind of are aligned with is really important. And neither one of us are wrong. It's just how our bodies are reacting to that.
And I think to one of the points of his question, I think categories of putting a shoe in neutral, motion control, stability, stable neutral. Yeah. You can categorize a shoe as a stability shoe, and it can be very unstable, partially because what people need for stability changes as well. So I'm thinking about a shoe that both Andrea and Matt are testing right now, which I think is is that the That's the Mach X3, right?
Yep.
So the Mach X3, Andrea feels like it's the most unstable shoe in the world because she is feeling unstable laterally.
Yeah.
Whereas Matt feels like it's the most stable shoe for him because it's stabilizing him medially. Yeah. So when there are differences in how we categorize shoes in their function, maybe their category in specs on paper might put it as a stable neutral shoe. Mm-hmm. But then it does come down to your personal experience if the shoe is actually stable or not. Even if it's a posted stability shoe, it can still be unstable for you. I don't know if that distinction makes sense.
That makes total sense. It makes me wonder if we need to be more specific when we say stable neutral. Like, you can have a shoe that, like, I would almost argue that David, what's the shoe that you held up with? The Puma DV8, that's the Magnify.
Got him.
Yeah, I was going to screw that up. The Magnify Nitro 3, or the Nitro whatever, Magnify 3. There's a lot of lateral flare in that heel, and it pushes me in. But I could totally see someone that really needs some like stable neutral, like supination stabilization that actually might work really well with. So maybe that's also on us to go, hey, how do we need to get a better job of categorizing this to go, when we say stable, what does that mean? Because I think originally what we meant is it keeps you really centered. But I think
for stable neutral, it's like it's not pushing you one way or another.
Yeah, and so maybe that's
kind of
that may be my fault because I've kind of used that going, oh, this is a neutral shoe, but it's working well for me as someone with stability needs. But I think we need to do a better job, especially me, of categorizing. Is it actually keeping you centered, or is it biased one way? And so maybe the better term might be, okay, like the Megablast may have some lateral bias, and maybe stable neutral isn't the best term. So that's on me, and I definitely have probably not been using that correctly. So
I don't think that's on you. I think it's just a nature of the squishiness of these categories. And I think it's helpful to have had this stable neutral term because of how geometries have changed in the last 5 to 10 years. But it's not, I don't know. Yeah. It's not very black and white.
Relative.
It's not very clean. Yeah. Relative to needs.
Did we come up with that, or was that somewhere else that we pulled that from?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't want to take credit for it, but I think, it might need some better defining, and we need to kind of stick with some definitions. So yeah,
that's great. Okay, I have our next question. Or David, do you have anything to add about this topic?
Yeah, if the Megablast is quote unquote truly neutral, I don't know what the Magnify 3 is.
Okay, fair.
Moving forward. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Great. Okay, let's just keep talking about the Megablast for a second. So this is a question from Jared.
The next 40 questions are all on the Megablast.
No.
I'm just kidding.
One more. Just one more. This is what Jared says. I ran my first half marathon back in November 2024. Congrats. Using the Neo Vista. Great shoe.
Nice.
While I loved the shoe's feel, I had some discomfort in my left knee. Eventually, a more experienced runner friend of mine suggested I switch to a lower drop shoe since I have decent ankle mobility. Once I made that switch, which they use the Topo Spectre 2 and Ultra Flow 2, my knees have been pain-free. I understand that drop is a static measurement, and you recommend considering the, quote, drop feel, too. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about the drop feel of the new Asics Megablast. I'm really interested in trying that new foam, but not at the expense of my knees. I didn't notice anything in the drop feel in your shoe review, which is why I'm reaching out like this. Thanks in advance.
It's 8mm?
Yes.
On paper.
Yeah, on paper.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of give to the foam. It probably feels closer to a 6 to me, like from a static standpoint. If I'm measuring it, like, quote unquote static. And that's the hard thing with a lot of these new shoes, with how soft and compliant some of these foams are getting, where, like, let's say the Magnified Nitro 3, it's a 10mm drop platform. And although it feels higher up, the foam compresses so far down that it's like you feel the drop, but at the same time, it transitions almost more like probably a 6 to 8.
Yeah. So here's actually my response to this question. They're asking about drop, but I almost think that it's a different factor of the shoe entirely. Knowing that I don't know anything about this person's knee pain and what it actually was and what was going on. When I think about shoe similarities, Topo Spectre and Ultra Flow 2 not only have lower drops, but they also have more flexible forefoots, and they don't really operate on a significant rocker. The Spectre a little bit, but not super rigid, nothing like the Neo Vista.
Mm-hmm.
So if I think about rocker profile, which can shift load up from the ankle, I think the Megablast is closer to the Neo Vista than it is to the Topo Spectre and Ultra Flow 2, both in drop and in rocker feel and kind of just like running experience.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest difference between the Neo Vista and the Megablast in my mind is the softness of the foam. I think Neo Vista, very soft, compliant, kind of squishy, bouncy, trampoliny, whereas the Megablast is like light, poppy, quick roll, responsive, but they both operate off of that rocker. So I almost think the rocker is more the consideration than the actual drop. But I agree with you, David, that the drop does feel probably in that kind of moderate drop, 5, 6, 7, 8 in that realm. You probably lose a little bit from the static measurement. But Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to be very careful with how I answer this because that's been one of my go-to shoes with my Achilles stuff right now, which shouldn't make sense. But I think it's because my foot strike has probably changed to avoid, because I really don't have a lot of dorsiflexion right now, and I've felt my gait change to avoid needing it as much. So I'm getting up more on my forefoot. So I'm likely loading a shoe in a way that is making it easier for me to tolerate. So I'm probably loading the forefoot a lot more than the heel. So again, my answer is probably not good because I'm adjusting around it. But I totally agree that I'm actually hesitating to suggest it. Even with if you like our Heelstriker and you can load that foam, it's a very stiff shoe. And a lot of what gets it through, a lot of what's probably helped me too, is the fact that it is rockered. Initially though, it's pretty stiff. And Nate's exact thing where he's like, is there a plate in here? Like, I had read the things and I'm like, okay, there's no plate. But it's exactly the same thing as Super Blast, where honestly, I think the original Super Blast
might as well be one.
Yeah, my knee actually bothered me just walking in the original Super Blast. It took me like walking for in a week to break it in. It was so stiff. I'm like, there's no way this is unplated. I'm not saying you should be that. Asics has done a lot better with the geometry, or my body's adjusted, one of the two. But yeah, I would agree that it's probably more the geometry of the setup compared to the other two that you're talking about. And so again, drop isn't the only factor. It can influence this stuff, but also really rocker geometries are going to shift load up away from the ankle anyway. So I think that's a factor you may have to pay attention to, and that's probably not the best shoe to consider for this. So I would be hesitant to suggest the Megablast. In fact, I think Nate's right that and David's going to be like the Vista. So
yeah. Great. Well, let's move on to our next question. This is from Andrew, who's asking about stability options. This is what he says. Working on finding a new running shoe with my physical therapist as I come back from a hip back injury that causes sciatica pain in the left glute. I generally run in Saucony neutral shoes, but I'm transitioning to stability, but moderate, as stability tends to hurt my knees and arches. Due to hip issues, would you suggest the Guide, Hurricane 25, or the Tempest? Hurricane 24 price does look like a very good option as well. I'm sticking to the Saucony family recently as they fit my feet the best.
Can I talk?
So what I like, can I say something that I like about this question?
Yep.
And I don't know exactly how these conversations are going, but if I was a physical therapist working with a patient and they love to run, but I didn't know that much about shoes, I would love to collaborate with somebody who did know a ton about shoes, but that I could add in my expertise about what I think the person needs. So what I'm getting from this question is that their PT thinks that they would benefit from some sort of structure and stability in the shoe. And so now it's like, okay, now what type, what kind? Because there's a bunch of them. So I like this question. That's just a quick aside. And I just like the approach that this person and the PT seem to be taking on it. So they're basically asking Guide, Hurricane 25, or Tempest. They've got this sciatica pain in the left glute, but they have a history of knee pain with a lot of structured stability shoes.
Which is good because the three that they've listed are not that highly structured. Even the Guide's probably one of the more...
The
least. Yeah, that's like borderline stable neutral kind of shoe, even though it's still listed as a stability shoe because it's much more centered, and that's actually how they intended it. It is very rockered, So my only
that was my next question is like which neutral shoes from Saucony?
Yeah. My hesitancy with like low back hip stuff is that, again, the more rocker the profile, the softer the shoe, the more likely you are to have like tensioning and stuff and redistribution of forces away from the foot and ankle and up higher, not necessarily to the spine always, but you know, that's in theory, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, I think my vote would honestly be for the Guide because it doesn't have the super foams. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but inherently when you add a softer foam, well, the Tempest might be better because that's not soft at all, in my opinion. The Guide might be the best because it's going to keep you centered. It's not going to bias you one direction. Is it rockered? Yes, but it breaks in pretty quick and there's some flexibility in there. That would be the one that
flexibility
in my what?
I just said, I think there's definitely some flexibility.
I think that one's going to be the least controlling and the most guided of the group. I think the Guide 24 was nice in theory. It didn't work that well for me. I didn't feel like it was that stable, but I felt like it was softer. And I kind of struggle with that. And it's pretty heavy too. So if you're like...
Are you saying the Hurricane?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What did I just say?
You said Guide 24, but you meant...
I'm sorry.
I was like, that doesn't seem consistent.
Yeah, the Guide 24, like 6 years from now that we're not supposed to talk about.
From now, it's like futures thinking here.
Yeah, sorry. No, you're right. I'm sorry. The Hurricane 24 did not work well for me. The Hurricane 25 was interesting, but also really soft. And my hips, I struggle with that shoe. The Tempest is fine. I'm assuming they're talking about Tempest 2. It's just, I'm really struggling with that shoe for some reason. I'm not sure if I'm not reacting well and it's actually soft and I'm feeling it firm up or if it's actually firm. So I guess my order would probably be Guide, Tempest, Hurricane, with Guide being probably the best option, but also being open and knowing that people respond differently. So my top two would be Guide and Tempest and seeing if you could try them on and then seeing how you actually respond. But that's me. What do you two think?
Yeah, I mean, my answer is the same on the order of things. I would love to know like which shoes they're running in, right? Because the Triumph uses Power Run PB and the Ride uses Power Run Plus, which are both in theory softer than Power Run that you would get in the Guide. But I feel like and also like the difference between like the Ride has some flexibility, Triumph's a little bit stiffer, and the rocker profiles, though similar, they act differently because of the stack difference. That's what makes it a little tricky. It's hard when I don't know what neutral shoes they're running in. But if I'm playing it safe, the Guide is kind of the safer of the options, like for all the reasons that you said. So I'd kind of lean that direction. If you already know you like the Saucony fit, you can give it a try them on. Tempest kind of follows a similar light where they kind of focus more on the guidance. I didn't have the Tempest 2, so I didn't get to try that one. But just kind of going based on the philosophical ideas of the first lineage of it, kind of goes in line with what you're looking there, with the Hurricane kind of being the more stable of the bunch and the most going on of the bunch. I feel like that's the wild card of the three. So I think you can have a little bit more expectation of like what you're going to feel with the Guide and kind of how you might respond. It's the safest option, I would think.
Just to throw a slightly different opinion out there. As somebody who has a history of getting lateral knee pain with stability shoes, I've gotten that with the new structure of the Guide, but I haven't gotten that with the Tempest. The Guide operates its stability elements off of more sole flaring, whereas the Tempest has that kind of dual density midsole with a little bit of basically a post, but it's pretty mild. I could do just fine in the Tempest because the platform wasn't super flared one way or another, whereas the flaring on the Guide got me. So I think it's probably one of those, go out and try it, go run it and see which one feels, if it's pushing you one way or another. And if your knee pain isn't anything like mine with stability shoes, then throw this idea out. But for me, I got tons of miles in the Tempest. I couldn't get any miles in the Guide. And I also agree with what y'all said. The Guide is wedged
as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big medial wedge. Yeah, so even though it's not like a hard post. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's you just got to try them. And I think that those are probably the two safest options. Also, if your Saucony stable shoes have been the Ride and the like this Endorphin Speed, not the Triumph. If it's only been the Speed and you haven't tried the Triumph 22, I think the Triumph 22 could be a solid option too, because that has a relatively structured shoe because it's a firm power on PB. It's a really wide platform. I think truly stable neutral, kind of circling back to that conversation. That could be another option if you haven't been on that shoe platform. And I haven't tried the 23, so I can't speak to that when it comes to the Triumph. But the 22, I think, could be something to think about.
Yeah. 23 got quite a bit more responsive, which could be good or bad. So there's a lot more bounce in the foam rather than it felt more compliant in the prior version.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good idea.
Right. Cool.
I like it.
All right, we have one more question for the night, and I'm just going to read it verbatim. So this is just the question. This is from Moose on the Loose.
Oh, sweet.
Asks Moose on the Loose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Goose on the Loose. The Goose was on the loose today, by the way. Did you see the race?
No, I didn't see. I did not.
The Goose was indeed on the loose today. New York City.
Oh, how'd it go?
The mile.
How'd it go?
He won 3:48.
Hey-o. All right, here we go.
On the road.
Moose on the Loose asks this, or says this. Make heel striking sexy again, please. Vanity runfluencers are increasingly smiting heel strikers lately. Well, more in a subtle way than actually whacking around with the holier-than-thou selfie stick. Sorry.
The holier-than-thou selfie stick. I like that.
But it kind of comes out like this. I said, but all of this great racing shoe except for heel strikers. Us 4-foot strikers could use this super shoe. However, heel strikers and more 4-foot strike fetish nonsense is starting to become the new pronation is bad thing. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading through this. I hope everyone's following. And this flat hoofed heel striking moose with no issues running in soft racing shoes has had it. Heel strikers are doing fine, and most people are lured to the forbidden fruit that is heel striking later in a race anyway. It's a long distance between an Instagram vanity reel and the last 5 miles in a marathon, and nasty things can happen whenever your foot is landing, when your running form starts to melt down and descends into the flying spaghetti monster. Super racing shoes are made with elite runners in mind anyway, and they are so strong they can manage these wobbly soft foams. Heck, they can probably even manage waterbed mattresses strapped to their feet. So can heel strikers feel okay again? Thanks, a concerned moose. So
I want to meet concerned moose.
Yes, this is awesome.
I know, poetic. Very well.
Watch me like no
written.
concerned moose. That'd be hilarious.
And just my apologies for how poorly I was able to deliver the message that you gave, because there was so much heart in your messaging and I felt like I failed to deliver. So shame on me. And what do y'all think about this? This is more of like an exposition and thoughts. And what's your reaction, Matt? Why don't you start?
David, why don't you go? Because I've written articles for Runner's World on this exact topic, why heel striking is okay. But David, go first before I launch into my thing.
Yeah. I mean, at first I'll lead off. I think Nate needs to spend more time on like the dark side of YouTube, deep in the pits of Instagram Reels, TikToks. Like we got to get him a little bit more cultured. But moving forward from that, well, actually, I thought there was speaking of Instagram Reels, oh gosh. Do you guys follow Rosner, Performance Jonah? The sports scientist guy?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, he actually put up a pretty good one the other day talking about some of the data coming out on heel strikers and that the majority of elites are heel strikers, right? And we know this, but a lot of people feel like they kind of fantasize this like, oh no, if you're fast, you strike on the 4-foot, which is just simply not true across pretty much all the distances, just about. And that includes guys like Kipchoge and Bekele and like, some studs on this planet, and they are heel strikers. And so when they design these shoes, they're designing it to be economic for the paces and the demands that those runners are putting them on, not necessarily for 4-foot striking. And so that's kind of just a little side tangent there. But yeah, heel strikers are fine. Run in the shoes that are comfortable. Try them on. If you like them, roll with it. There's nothing wrong with heel striking. I heel strike. Nate heel strikes. Klein really heel strikes. So, so with that, I will let Klein continue.
So this has been going on for years, where it's like this. Even beforehand, there's actually a point where all like run coaches were trying to get everybody heel strike because it was believed to be more economical. And then the barefoot stuff came along, and like everybody needs to get up on their forefoot. And people are only. This is the common fallacy. This is what it's so easy to do on social media, is going, let me distill all running down to a single thing, and this is the make or break thing. And I say this as somebody who before PT school totally did this and was like, forefoot striking has to be it. Human movement variability is incredible. And I will say a lot of the people that claim to be forefoot strikers, there's actually evidence that you actually can't tell what you're doing. Yeah. People are very, very, very bad at reporting what they're actually doing. And there's actually research on this topic.
I think that study had about 50% accuracy for recreational runners.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think it was
lower
close.
Than that. I think
less than 50% of people were right about whether they were forefoot, midfoot, or rear foot strikers. Most people don't know.
Yeah. I will argue, and this is not necessarily evidence-based, that your landing point can either be I'm going to stand by what I'm about to say, can either be initiated or a result by other things. So it can either be caused at the foot and ankle or caused higher up. It's a multifactorial thing. And actually, if you watch the elite most runners, the people that are really good at being economical, their foot strike will change. If you watch them throughout a race, a lot of people will maybe be a little bit more farther forward as they're starting out pretty quick, and then it will adjust throughout, they'll typically get a little farther back. There's people who will switch back and forth there's a couple of case studies of the most elite people just going, as if they fatigue, they switch. And there's one thing, this muscle group, this group of muscles that are associated with that landing pattern, they'll switch again. And they may be switching for other reasons, but one isn't better than the other. One is not more economical than the other. There's actually been some recent research that found, it's basically the same, that there's a lot more important factors. Injury risks or injury rates between the two of them are exactly the same. Yep. The types of injuries are going to be different because you're loading different tissue, although not always. And as David said, like when you are designing at least current concepts now, and maybe a footwear developer could correct me, but with all the people that I've talked to recently, they're not necessarily worried about foot strike. They're worried with, the running economy, right? What's the oxygen usage, right? How does fatigue play into this? All these other factors, like biomechanics doesn't tell you the full story. And I say that as someone with a PhD in biomechanics, that people move in interesting ways that are economical for them. And honestly, when you start trying to change things, initially, that's when you have a nightmare. There's evidence that if you want to really change somebody's running biomechanics, it takes about 9 months to make a permanent change, and you ruin their running economy for the first maybe half or 75% of that. And you may not get back where they were. Right. So heel striking is fine. More than 70 to 80% of both the recreational and elite population heel strike. There's a lot more other things that you need to focus on, right? Like your overall training, your strength, your ability to tolerate load. Your foot strike is often going to be a result of a lot of those other things. And why you choose that, we might know, we might not. But saying everybody needs to do that is actually how everybody needs to heel strike or forefoot strike. Trying to say this is how you need to adjust your foot strike is how you hurt people. Unless there's a medical reason to do this and you've exhausted all other I almost never change this. This is I've literally run out of everything else. There's nothing else we can do. Let's try this and see what happens. There's so many other better things to focus on, but those things aren't sexy, right? Strength training for runners isn't sexy. Sleep isn't sexy. Getting adequate nutrition and not overcomplicating it isn't sexy. But, for social media, you create divide and you create what's the term I'm looking for? Sensationalism. And that's what
get the people going.
Yeah. That's what gets people going. But honestly, the research and biomechanists and all the clinicians are like, this is old. This has been going on for years and it's not new.
Yep. I have one thing to add that's not that important. I 100% agree with everything that you said. In fact, I spoke with the students yesterday. I showed them at the beginning of the semester. I show a few different reels of people making really compelling arguments about things related to health and fitness. And then I say, where all the research is that actually that's just wrong and they're just trying to sell you a product.
Yeah.
And so I want to, because there's so much access to information right now, and especially as blossoming healthcare providers, they need to be extremely critical of how they learn and what the sources are that they learn from. So that's the point of that activity. One of them is about forefoot striking. They go on this long expose about why you need a forefoot strike. And I basically told them all the evidence in the contrary and how there's different things that happen with each. And
I would say,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think I'm glad that you brought that up, because even amongst the most objective, there is still going to be bias.
Yes.
Across. So like, even when you look deep into the researchers, like researchers have their own niche for a reason, right? They're interested in a specific thing, a specific variable. How can we modify that? And they get so deep into some of those things that like sometimes that outer world does get a little bit missed.
Yep.
And so I think it is good to kind of exercise some, I don't know, take it with a grain of salt, but also like read it, observe it, and then make your own educated decision based on a variety of different sources. When you are looking at different kinds of content and or research and or stuff coming out that you're reading or seeing or watching or experiencing.
Right. The one shoe I was going to bring up that I think is one of those that may not work.
Megablast.
No, I'm not going to say Megablast. But I am going to say if there's a shoe that may not work for as many rear foot strikers, it'd be the Mizuno Wave Rebellion Pro, because of how extreme the bevel is on that thing and how far it comes up. At the same time, the other reality is that not all rear foot strikers are created equal. Like there are some that land way far back and there are some that like grace it and move forward. How you load that area changes. So your shoe is the shoe that's going to work for you is going to be the one that feels good. So go run in them. Don't let someone tell you that it's not going to work for you because of how you strike. It didn't work for them because of how they strike. Like there are shoes, Wave Rebellion Pro, that for me as a rear foot striker doesn't work. I can see why it may not work for other people who run like me or that land even further back. And I could also be wrong. So you just got to go run in it. Yeah. Don't let someone tell you can't run in something.
You be you.
I will also add to that as emphasizing Nathan's point even more, that the actual angle of the foot of how it lands is called the inclination angle. And like saying somebody heel strikes or forefoot strike, that doesn't actually tell us that much. Like it doesn't tell us the angle, that kind of stuff. So for me, my inclination angle can sometimes be really low. So the Rebellion Pro actually works decently for me because and this is the Rebellion Flash, but right where that pivot is like right where I land. So I actually
you're over it.
Bounce it. I bounce through that. So it actually works really well for me, even though Nate and I are both heel strikers, and yet a shoe still works completely differently for us. So there's a lot of factors. I think
that's a good point.
Yeah, there's a lot of good
Rebellion
things.
Rebellion Pro 1 for me, I landed right on it, and then they changed that angle a little bit in 2 and 3, and I didn't do as well with 2 and 3. Right. But I loved 1.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
It's not
everyone, thank you.
You don't need to complicate it. Life is actually pretty simple. Like you need to train appropriately, you need to stay healthy, and you need to find something that fits well for your feet, and know that while we are trying to help you with that and provide reviews, you should not even take our words 1,000%. We are here for guidance, but ultimately you have to learn what works for you, because you're an individual, you're an N of one. As we say in research, you got to be able to figure out, we're here to help educate you so that you can make better educated guesses for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining us for this episode. If you have more questions for us, please feel free to email us at doctorsofrunning@gmail.com. We don't get to everything, but we love to be able to engage with these questions as they come up here so that we can have these conversations and hopefully talk about things that end up helping you in the future. So thank you again for joining us for this episode. And Matt has one more thing to say.
Kayano.
Still wrong.
It's better than Keanu.
Good night, everybody.